Hello. You could just type your questions in the side if you're in my class, that is. I hope you can hear me. Okay. Ashna Patel, hello. I was wondering how much you wanted us to write for the short response question on the exam. I'd say 3 to 5 sentences, and the better or the more you write, the better. Make sure you answer the question, but it depends. Some of them, like the one question, let me see here. Let me pull up the exam. It didn't let me email you and have the exam up at the same time. There's one that is a little bit more open-ended and a little bit longer. But I would say 3 to 5 sentences should suffice, depending on the question. So, for example, one of the questions, what are the implications of that there are no moral truths? That's a short answer. On the other hand, what is the relationship between revenge and resentment? In other words, what is his argument? What's Nietzsche's argument in the first chapter of the first essay of Genealogy of Morals? That's a little bit more open-ended and a little longer. I'd be looking for there. I hope that answers that question. How will the next 2 tests be broken up? Will it be a test on Aristotle the next week? Then the last 2 readings the following week? Yeah, so the next test will be just on Aristotle. And then the last part will be on René Girard and a little bit on Kant. Okay. Those are easy. Well, that was easy. Maybe that's it. If nobody come, oh, here we go. Is the exam due tomorrow night at 11:59? The email said midweek. What's tomorrow? Thursday. I'll give till Saturday at 11:59. Oh, you're welcome. So Saturday, 11:59. It's a little bit different. The course was originally designed for a 3-week course, but now we're in 4 weeks, so I'm stretching it out a little bit. Okay. Oh, great. You're welcome. These are easy. I was thinking if they were content-based, I could save this and, people could watch it later. But, if there's particular questions. If nobody starts with questions in a couple minutes, I'll just try to run through the exam. Could you explain what pragmatic efficacy means? You don't have to say question, just the terms. Pragmatic efficacy, let me see if I could find the question you're talking about. That just means it works or it's effective. And I think you're referring to the question with regard to science. Let me pull up that question here. Yeah, so true or false, science for Nietzsche requires ultimately no justification since its truth is proven in its pragmatic efficacy, namely technology. In other words, does science require justification or not? And I'm thinking of that, I think, section 324 of the Genealogy of Morals, so the third essay, part 24, where he says something like, does the value of truth require justification? Science for Nietzsche requires ultimately no justification since its truth is proven in its pragmatic efficacy, namely technology. So the question is, what's the relationship between science and truth? Does it require justification? But pragmatic efficacy just means it works. Since science works, it doesn't need justification. Is Nietzsche saying that? Or is he saying, on the contrary, that some people just assume science, because it works, it's true? And that's what Nietzsche's calling into question there. I hope I didn't give away the answer there. Thanks, Catherine. Did that answer your question? Radical untethering from. Does this mean going with or separating? Let me see the question here. so I can get the context. Yeah, separation. So, in other words, atheistic modern science, which occasioned the very death of God, finally results in a radical untethering from Christian theism for Nietzsche. In other words, does Nietzsche think science has any connection to Christianity or not? So, for Nietzsche, atheistic modern science, which occasioned the very death of God, finally results in a break from Christian theism. True or false? Or does he think, on the contrary, that it's actually a new form of Christian theism? There's a wink. That's a wink. Good question, Kira. Very good. So I try to put a little bit of ridiculous words in here because I think the questions are actually very easy. And just when you read these things, just think, is there anything true, or excuse me, is there anything false in it? So if there's anything false, and usually it's pretty blatant. It may seem with the wording and stuff that it's tricky, but it's really not. So for example, that one, all I'm asking is the relationship for Nietzsche between Christianity and science for Nietzsche. And remember, he thinks that Christianity is still alive and well in atheistic modern science. Why? Because it still believes in truth. Hope I didn't answer that question either. See, this is the problem with these things. I just end up answering the questions. Feel free to ask whatever you like, too. Oh, we have 8 people. Great. Great. This is very weird. I should have done a Zoom, but that might have been even more awkward because I never met any of you before. Here I am just talking to myself now, like Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park when he's stuck in the vehicle. Oh, 10 people now. Great. For those of you who just arrived, I'm taking questions in the little chat thing here. Any questions you have on the exam or the content or just in general, happy to answer. This is for my ethics 2020 online class. I wonder if somebody who took the class a while ago just got the link and came in, and it probably seems very boring. So I don't know. I figure we'll go till about 8:30 if there's a lot of questions. There doesn't appear to be many questions. I guess if you want to take the exam now or open it up and just look through it. Would it be helpful for anybody who's listening if I went through it? Well, it might be tedious though. Let me see here. Hmm. 10 people waiting for questions. Ethics 2020, University of Scranton, online. You're welcome. I wonder if there's a delay on this. So I'll go for about 20 more minutes, 21 more minutes, because it says I've been live for 9 minutes and 20 seconds. Just to repeat again, the only question I'm looking for a more substantial answer is the question concerning the first essay in the genealogy of morals on resentment. Even then, I'd say 5 sentences should suffice. 3 to 5 sentences on the other one. Even the one that I'm asking about truth, you could probably answer that in 1 or 2 sentences. Okay, Jessica, is there any way for the 2 true or false that are talking about? Wait, let me read this again. Is there any way for the 2 true false that are talking about is true true? You could elaborate on them. Okay, Ashna, just to answer your question, 7 and 15 meant to be similar. You have to tell me which they are because I think they're randomized. I think they're randomized, but okay, let me take Jessica's question first. Yeah, so is there any way for the 2 true or false that are talking about is true true? You could elaborate on them. Yeah, remember, Nietzsche's consistent. He doesn't think there's any truth. So he thinks everything is false, right? So could anything be true for Nietzsche? Well, no, everything is false for Nietzsche. If you say something's true, you bought into the conceptual framework of Christianity, okay? The other one, where there is no truth, how could that be true? How could that be true? If you say it's true, it's self-referentially incoherent. The only answer, it seems to me, is that it could be false or should be false. So is that there is no truth would have to be false, right? Unless you have a better compelling answer. How would you say there is no truth? Even if you take it outside of Nietzsche, even if you yourself think there is no truth, how could you say that's true? Because you just said there's no truth. So you'd have to say it's false, because everything would be false then. So they're very much related. Okay, 7 and 15, you have to tell me which ones they are. Do you have any tips for the true false questions in general? Yes, Catherine, the best tip I can give is go through it very carefully, decode it, and then find out if there's anything false in it. If there's anything false in it, it's false. I mean, it seems kind of obvious, but if you break them up and translate the words, I have on my Mac, you can just look up the words that are a bit more ridiculous vocab words, and you just translate them and you just find out if anything's true. Usually I'm asking something blatant, like the Nietzsche question, does Nietzsche believe in truth? Well, no, he doesn't believe in truth. So how could anything be true? Actually, they're the ones that have to do with there is no truth. Okay, so I already answered that. I can answer that again, just very quickly. To say there is no truth, to take that philosophical position, in order to be consistent, you can't even say that sentence is true. There is no truth. Let's say you don't believe in truth, right? Then that wouldn't be true either. Nothing would be true. That's Nietzsche's point. Nothing is true. Everything is false. Everything therefore becomes a subjective feeling or a matter of artwork. It's just about preference. Nietzsche simply prefers his philosophy because he thinks it's more pro-life. And he simply prefers pro-life because he does. And he thinks Christianity is anti-life. Does that make sense? Hope that answered the question. I'm happy to go over those two questions on whether there is any truth are actually really easy. And I just answered them, I think. Good questions. Great questions. Did that answer your questions? Are you looking at a specific word limit for the short answer questions? No, you could write as much as you like. I'd say you don't need to. I'm usually asking something very specific in those questions, but so no, there's no word limit. You can write as much as you like. The more the merrier, because if you have it in there, I'll find it. Let's see, Amber, are you looking for quotes in the short answer since it's technically open book? No, that's fine. No quotes. I'm just looking for philosophical comprehension. It's very hard to test on what philosophy is trying to teach. So I'm not looking for any kind of rote memorization, but rather comprehension and understanding. So I'm trying to be able to assess thinking, and it's very difficult to assess thinking. It's easy to assess memorization, but not thinking. And feel free, if I don't answer the question, to just ask it again in another register or be very specific about it, because I'm happy to do that. And now that I'm looking back on this quiz, some of the questions are worded in a very challenging manner, but they're actually really easy. So, oh, you're welcome. So let's see. I'm just looking at question 1 on the one I'm looking. For Nietzsche, the will or desire for truth remains a mere guise of the underlying desire for power, the will to power. There, I'm just asking, is truth, is underneath truth the will to power, or is underneath the will to power truth? So the desire for truth remains a mere guise for the underlying desire for power, right? So that seems pretty straightforward, I would say. Hope this was a good time for everybody. At night, 8 o'clock at night, I don't know, I'm open to whenever you want to do these in the future, if there's a better time, but I could do a couple of them too. Great question so far. But just remember, the first part of the course is really about meta-ethics and about what are the philosophical foundations for ethics and the philosophical foundations of Western culture, or rather, what are the, according to Nietzsche, psychological sentiments or instincts behind morality in Western culture. And he thinks Christianity is what Judeo-Christianity is Western culture, and that behind it, of course, is weakness and hatred, and and the value of truth is weakness and hatred. I don't think that, of course, but I think Nietzsche's critique is pretty interesting. It's interesting he thinks that everything is a power move. Everything's a power move, including his own philosophy that says it's a power move. That's a power move too. But particularly compassion and truth are the two pillar values of Western culture, and those are power moves, laced with hate. Okay, 6 people are still here. Go for 15 more minutes. Oh, here we go. Caitlin, can elaborate some on the hermeneutics of suspicion question. Okay, let's see. Nietzsche's hermeneutics of suspicion, vis-a-vis morality, that is, with regard to morality or face-to-face with morality, seeks to uncover the power structures that remain latent in our notions of good and evil. So hermeneutics of suspicion just simply means anytime I interpret anything, hermeneutics just means interpretation, I'm suspicious. So anytime I see anything, I see the value of truth, I see people doing this, I go, that's not really what people are, they're not really concerned about truth, they're concerned about power. And so when he takes the idea of good and evil, he's saying, it's not good and evil, those are mere, they're a facade. Really what it's about is power. Okay, so I'm asking if that's, I hope that answered that question. Jessica, is the question you just spoke about saying that truth is the front for will to power, or the other way around? I'm saying that Nietzsche is saying truth, all Western values, truth, compassion, mercy, kindness, concern for victims, they're all power moves, okay? So the question I'm asking, I'm saying, is that true or not? I think I just gave away the answer here. For Nietzsche, the desire for truth remains a mere guise of the underlying desire for the will to power. Hope I didn't just give that answer away. It's okay if I did. Hope it makes sense. Okay, we're down to 4. Well, let's see. For Nietzsche, those noble masters whose morality is that of the affirmation of life created from a pathos of distance consider the world in terms of good and evil, while the slaves, those who deny life, argue the world in terms of good and bad. Remember, the question there is very simply, does master morality see the world in terms of good and bad or good and evil? Does slave morality see the world in terms of good and bad or good and evil? Remember what Nietzsche says, in order to demonize something and hate something, you have to think it evil. And remember, hatred comes out of weakness. For Nietzsche, the slave revolt in morality begins when resentment itself becomes created and gives birth to values. That's a question, right out of your text, I think. Well, I won't tell you where it is. It's in the first essay. I just told you where it is. For Nietzsche, in punishment, there is so much that is festive. It means simply that human beings experience a catharsis or purging or a release in their outward expressions of violence and cruelty. For Nietzsche, the atheism that results culturally from modern science and technology leads finally to a freeing of the human being's conscience from the hegemony of guilt. True or false? That's an interesting one for Nietzsche. Question is, are we really guilt-free once God dies, or do we have no way of expunging our guilt? For Nietzsche, the truth is that there is no truth, thus there is no truth is true. Will Nietzsche say that that's true? There is no truth. We already talked about that one. It's very easy, those ones. For Nietzsche, punishment is supposed to possess the value of awakening the feeling of guilt in the guilty person. However, generally speaking, punishment makes men hard and cold. It concentrates. It sharpens the feeling of alienation. It strengthens the power of resistance. That's a quote right from chapter 2 or essay 2. Very briefly, what's the origin of bad conscience? That's in the second essay. Nietzsche's relativistic perspectivism. Nietzsche's relativism, his perspectivism, eventuates, leads into a metaphysics or ontology of the objectivity of moral values, truths, and facts. Is that what is it? Does it lead to the objectivity or the subjectivity? For Nietzsche, laughter is Schadenfreude with the addition of a good conscience. That one's easy. For Nietzsche, to be incapable of taking one's enemies, one's accidents, even one's misdeeds seriously for very long, that is a sign of weak, empty natures. That's a quote right from essay 1. For Nietzsche, Christianity, as opposed to Dionysium, represents the absolute unconditional affirmation of life, characterized by resentment, and is as such consistent of master morality. Is that master morality or slave morality? Okay, so I just went through pretty much every question. But I'll be here for 10 more minutes or however long you want to ask me questions. And remember, you can message me on Google Chat or Hangouts, whatever it's called, or Facebook, or however you want to get in touch. Is fine with me. If you want to, I'm online a lot. Or email is fine too. Or I'm happy to do a Zoom. Amber, are you going to post this once it's over? Sure, if you want. I mean, there might be a lot of lag time, but sure, I'll leave it up, at least for a little while. I'm happy to answer the same question 15 times too. I don't mind, because I've taught this class online what feels like 40 times. So it's the same. It usually is the same questions too. It's kind of funny. The same. Most people have the same questions. It's actually a very easy exam. People end up doing very well on it, and very well in the class too. It's not a difficult class. It might seem like it. I always say, if you're going to set up like on a 90s video game, there used to be settings: very easy, medium, hard, very hard. This class should be in the easy to medium range. Not very easy. It's not a cakewalk, but it's generally easy, I would say, if you watch the videos, especially. Every time I've seen a YouTube live video, it usually goes, there's usually a lot more questions, so the person isn't just sitting here staring. Caitlin, can you explain what radical untethering from Christian theism means? Sure. Is it separate or not? Is atheistic modern science tied to Christian theism? Tethering just means together. Is it separate or is it bound with it? In other words, is atheistic modern science joined or not joined to Christian theism? Does that answer the question? So I just to define untethering, I just got the definition here. What I mean by it is separate or not, but release, free from a tether. So, tied to it. X, let's see. While studying for the next exam, would you want us to focus more on your videos or the readings? You're welcome, Caitlin. The videos and readings supplement one another. Technically, you could probably just watch the videos, but I think it's much easier to understand what's going on if you're reading as well. And I think the readings are fun, but I'm a philosophy professor and I do this for a living, so I'm biased. But you can just watch the videos, I think, and probably get by, because I don't take anything specifically from the readings without telling you, but some of the questions are taken right from the readings. So, but there's nothing in those readings that I didn't already go over in the lectures, if that makes sense. So I might just lift a quote from the readings or from the book, but that quote would have already been discussed in a different register, or paraphrased, if you will. So that's a good question. Okay, we're down to 4 with about 5 minutes left. 3. Okay. About 5 more minutes I'll go here if there's any more questions. I went through the whole exam. I went through the true or false. So 2 people left. Let's see. Bad conscience. How is science murder of God simultaneously its own suicide? There's a YouTube video on that. What I simply mean there is that the death of God is also the death of truth. So, but once God is dead, we have no right to think that the world is actually intelligible, actually ordered, because truth is a value. And just because science works doesn't mean it's true. There are a lot of scientific theories in the history of science that have worked very well, and they were proven false. So Nietzsche just takes that all the way and says, we have no right to think that anything is true simply because it works. Matter of fact, you're holding on to the idea that the world is intelligible, that it's ordered by an orderer. In other words, it's theism. So I've noticed that in your videos on Nietzsche, there are some specific sections on which you have stressed. Does it mean that they are the most important sections? Absolutely. Excuse me. Absolutely. Absolutely. Those are the important sections. You can, what I would prefer is if you're going to read those sections carefully. Not everything Nietzsche puts on paper is brilliant. I've focused on those because I think they're the most interesting and the most relevant for what we're trying to do. So yeah, good question. Oh, you're welcome. Great question. And remember, feel free to email me if there are any questions too, or whatever. However you like to get in touch. I'm free for Zoom office hours whenever, really, because it's the summer. I'm off. Afternoons are best. Evenings, afternoons. But I assume everybody's working from home, or everybody's home still now. So a couple more minutes, we'll go. There's only 3 people left. I'm happy to go as long as you want, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of questions. So pull up the exam one more time here. Nietzsche writes, resentment itself, if it should appear in the nobleman, consummates and exhausts itself in immediate reaction, therefore does not poison. What's the difference between the way in which resentment appears in the nobleman versus the slave? Also, what does Nietzsche mean by poison? Of course, the poison here is resentment. And this is a direct quote from the first essay. I think somewhere after the 10th section. I can't remember exactly where it is. I left my book in my office, and they're not letting us in our offices now. So okay, if there's not any more questions within a minute or so, I'm going to take off, only because it'll make this video harder to watch. When, I'm happy to stay here all night, but it'll make it harder to watch when I pull it back up. Does pragmatic efficacy mean the same thing as technology? Yeah. In other words, does it work? In other words, is science true because it works? Which I just kind of said. I just sort of answered no. So pragmatic, does it work? Efficacy means effective. Okay. But yeah, so it means the same thing as, is science true because it leads to greater and greater technology? No, for Nietzsche, right? The answer is simply, just because science can control the world doesn't mean we have any idea that it's true. This idea is known as instrumentalism in the philosophy of science. Great question. Very good question. Hope that helps. One person left. Maybe that's me. You're welcome. Anything else? Guessing it's just you, Caitlin, or maybe you left. Well, I'll go for another 30 seconds here. If not, I'll take off if there's no more questions. So about a half hour. This may have been completely useless or completely helpful. I'm not sure. Happy to do it again if there's a better time for some of you, if you're watching this video on repeat, let me know. Okay. Signing off then. Any other questions, email me, or I'm happy to do this again if enough of you are interested. Okay, thanks. Oh, there's 3 people here now. Are there any more questions? I was just about to leave. 2 people here. Are there any more questions? Even if you can't formulate the question, you could just type stay and I'll stay. Hi, Jacob. I was just seeing what questions other people had that I didn't think of. Oh, thanks. Oh, no, thank you. You're welcome. Can I, and for the 2 people that are here, do you need me to stay, or do you want to just look at this after? I think it should be helpful. Just type stay or not stay, or if I don't hear anything, I'll leave in a minute. Hope you guys are having a good summer. It was very warm today. And I hope you're getting outside. Probably stuffed in the house for months. 2 people left. I always try to give it a minute after a question or so. I'm good, thank you. Okay, great. Thank you, Jacob. Any questions, just email or, whatever. Contact me on one of those messenger things or whatever. Happy to answer. Okay. Bye. I'll put this up to share too, so you can look at this again. I think I went through all the questions too. There might be some lag time of me just staring off, but you could fast forward, I guess. Okay, bye.